Hello and welcome back to Democracy, everybody. Welcome back to Helldivers 2, where today we're going to be going over all of the Eagle stratagems, and we're going to be ranking them from the worst to the very best. Now, each of these can be good on their own separate missions, and we will talk about that briefly, as well as they can have certain bonuses towards certain races. Some of these might be better against bugs, some of them might be better against bots, some of them might be better against the squids. So let's hop right into this with our D tier first up. And we only really have one D tier Eagle airstrike, and that is the Eagle Smoke Strike. The Eagle Smoke Strike you can get at level 8. This one will cost you 4,000 requisition slips, so it's fairly cheap and you can get it fairly early on. It's only a 4-button input, and this one throws out smokes that kind of obscure the area. The initial hit from the smokes also deals damage, so if you manage to land a direct smoke canister shot onto something, you can potentially kill it, but that's the only way they're actually dealing damage. The smoke itself doesn't actually do any damage. So these ones can be good, and they are overall fairly interesting, because if you do put this in the right area, you can potentially stop enemies from at least shooting your teammates. This is probably best against the bots, but even then it's still of questionable use since they still usually fire randomly into the smoke, so it doesn't always help there. There have been missions where smokes can be particularly useful, but those aren't really all that common, and usually it's a way to more abuse the AI so that you can get an easy win on those particular missions on the higher difficulties. Then necessarily that smoke is a really good option. Generally it doesn't help out that much, although it is very safe to throw this near yourself or teammates, because you're very unlikely to get hit by the actual canister itself, assuming that you don't stand directly on where you threw it, and even then it might still miss. So you do have at least a chance of surviving this one, which isn't going to be the case for all of the ones that we're going to talk about. Moving on to the C tier stratagems, the one and only one we have here is the Eagle Cluster Bomb. Now this one has always been kind of an awkward one, as it can actually provide a lot of value, but it can also potentially cause a lot of problems to yourself and the team. This one is probably one of the worst stratagems to get knocked down when you're holding it, because there's a very high chance that it will kill you and potentially kill teammates. So the Cluster Bomb you can unlock at level 3, which is actually very low leveled. This will only cost you 4,000 requisition slips, so you should be able to get this one pretty early on. This one has medium armor penetration on it, although again the canister itself can potentially knock out certain things, like it can knock out bot factories, and I think it can knock out bug tunnels. I don't know if I've ever actually gotten it to do that, because it has to land directly in there, and it's very difficult, since once you throw this out, the Eagle will strafe left to right and drop these cluster bombs down on top of the enemies. This can be pretty cool, and it's really good for the crowd control, since it kills small and medium enemies very easily. It doesn't really do anything to big enemies unless they get hit directly with the shell. Medium enemies can still potentially tank through this, and it does have a fairly big explosion radius thanks to all the cluster bombs going off, so the friendly fire on this thing is pretty high. Now you do get 4 of these unless you have this upgraded, in which case you get 5. I should have mentioned with the smokes as well, you only get 2 of those unless it's upgraded, and then you get a third one. With the cluster bombs you do get a lot of them, 4 or 5, so you can spam these out pretty often, and if you're just using it for crowd control, especially on the edges of where your team is kind of going, it can be pretty good, but don't be too surprised if you end up racking up some team kills thanks to the cluster bombs. Moving on to our B tier stratagems, our very first one is the Eagle Napalm Strike. Now this one is kind of interesting, because this one can be unlocked at level 5. Now this one drops napalm upon your enemy, and it does deal damage over time thanks to the fire, which is pretty good, although it does potentially cut off an entire area to you thanks to the fire, so it kind of works in both directions unless you're using fireproof armor, in which case then it's generally pretty safe to run through it, at least after the bombs have actually hit, because the bombs do explode with this one too, so you can take damage thanks to that. This one will be unlocked at level 5, and it will cost you 5,000 requisition slips. Not very much, again it's a pretty early level for any of the Eagles. The most high level one I think we have is 15, so you should be able to unlock all of these relatively quickly in your games. This one is only a 4 input one. This one you only get 2 of unless you have the upgrade, in which case you get 3, making it potentially a little bit less useful than some of the other ones that you got. Overall, it's still fairly solid. It's still really good for the crowd control, and again, if the bombs actually hit something like a bug tunnel, they can close it, but it's a little bit unlikely for that to happen, so it has limited utility there. It's mostly just for the crowd control, and for that it is arguably better than something like cluster bomb, since at least then things have to walk through the fire if they want to get to you, or they have to go around it. Either way, it's buying you time, and it's potentially getting you more kills over time than something like them. Also in B tier, we have the Eagle 110 rocket pods. These ones can also be unlocked at fairly low level. At level 10, you can get these for 7,500 requisition slips. It's a 4-button input, and this one has anti-tank armor on it, which is really good. You get 3 of these normally, although if you upgrade, then you can have a 4th one. And these ones, when you throw them out, they pretty much try to target something that is nearby. This could be a building, this could be a large enemy. Generally, they're going to prioritize large enemies over small enemies. Small enemies might be targeted, but it's very, very unlikely. They usually just try to target something within the area. You don't really get to pick what they're trying to target, though. And generally, they're going to target the biggest thing there. So if you have something like a tank or a Hulk or something like that, it will probably be attacking that. Same thing goes with the bugs, where it will probably target something like a Titan or a Charger. But if those aren't available, then it will target like medium-sized bugs too. So the rocket pods can be pretty useful. You can toss these out, and they're relatively safe to throw wherever you need them to, unless there's like a Charger that's actively on top of you. That's about the only time where this is really going to be a problem. Sometimes Titans, generally the bugs are the biggest problem. Bots, it's pretty easy to actually hit whatever the bot is and not actually injure yourself or injure teammates thanks to it. And they can target buildings too, which can be useful, especially on like the bot missions. Technically, again, the rockets can target something like bug tunnels. It's just very unlikely that they're actually going to hit there just because of the weird angles. So not the most consistent there, but pretty decent on like the bot and the Illuminate missions, since the Illuminate ships are pretty big targets and the rockets tend to hit them as well, as long as you don't have tons of trees. But that's just sort of a problem with all of the Eagle airstrikes, besides maybe the strafing run, which we'll talk about here in a second. In our A tier, we have 2 more Eagles. The very first one is the Eagle strafing run. Now, this run is really good and generally pretty strong against everything. So this one you actually get unlocked at level 1, so as soon as you start the game, you can unlock this as soon as you get 1,500 requisition slips. It's just a 3 input button. This one you get 4 uses of, or 5 if you have upgrades, and this one is very simple. You throw it out, and it sends the Eagle's machine guns just straight forward from wherever you tossed it. Now, that can be a little bit weird if this ends up bouncing off of something. It usually goes in whichever direction it kind of bounced, so sometimes not always exactly in the direction you want, but so long as you throw it down basically at your feet, it should go right in front of you. And this one's actually really safe to be using in most terrains because it doesn't really care about the trees. It does pretty well against most enemies that it hits, as this has heavy armor penetration on it too, so you can hurt big enemies with this. And it clears up crowds really well. And since you get so many of them, it's not really that big of a deal if you miss one of these, because you can just spam them out after that. The Eagle strafing run is actually legitimately really strong. It can also potentially take out even big enemies like Chargers and Titans, tanks and Hulks, although it is very unlikely to actually take them out with just one run. It does take out Impalers quite efficiently though. Just one strafing run should kill them, and it's really good for crowds. The only real downside to this is that it doesn't really have consistency in terms of knocking out certain things. Like, it can't really knock out the Illuminate ships easily. It can still knock off their shields, so you can blow them up easier that way. It can still knock out like the bot factories, which is great, but still has somewhat limited use, and it's not always a guaranteed knockout. Either way, the strafing run is still a very solid option. Our second A tier is the Eagle Airstrike, also available at level 1. You get this one unlocked for 4,000 requisition slips, so it does cost you a bit more, and it's a 4-button input, but this one's an explosive one that has anti-tank properties on it. And this one you get 2 uses or 3 uses once it's upgraded, and this will send the Eagle strafing in with bombs that will explode. This is really, really good for knocking out objectives. It is very consistent for knocking just about everything out. It can knock out bug tunnels, bot factories, Illuminate ships, it can blow up eggs. It can get into quite a few places where the explosives are just really good for clearing up either smaller enemies, bigger enemies, or actually knocking out objectives. It's not always the most consistent, as sometimes the explosives go a little bit wide, but still, for the most part, it does quite well on the missions that you really want it to, and it's just an all-around very solid pick. And then into our S tier, we have one S tier Eagle Strike, which is the Eagle 500 kg bomb. This one is the last Eagle one that you can unlock. So this one unlocks at level 15, so still very early on, and this one will cost you 10,000 requisition slips, the most out of any of these. You only get one of these unless you get the upgrade to the ship, in which case then you get 2, and I would highly recommend that you get 2, because one of them isn't really that great, but 2 of them is really, really good. This is an anti-tank weapon as well as anti-everything weapon. It does really well at hitting just about everything. This one is a 5-button input, although it's a pretty easy 5-button input, especially once you get it down. This one you throw down, and then the Eagle pretty much drops a nuke on wherever you put it. And that does a lot of damage. It can close up bug tunnels, it can blow up bot factories, it can blow up Illuminate ships, it can blow up big enemies, it can blow up crowds. It kind of does everything that you would want it to do, so long as you actually get it where you need it to go. It is rather dangerous, especially ever since they buffed it to give it a bigger explosion radius, because previously the 500 kg was actually very small in the actual explosion radius. It did a lot of damage, but it wasn't necessarily the most effective towards everything, because it just didn't cover that much area. Now it does, and it's very, very strong. You definitely don't want this dropping out of your hand either. This is probably the second worst next to cluster bombs because it will probably kill you and your teammates. And I have blown up teammates quite a bit with the 500 kg. I've also been blown up by my teammates 500 kg plenty of times. It does happen pretty often, but this is a very devastating weapon, which is why it gets all the way up here into S tier. And that'll do it for all the Eagle stratagems, at least as for right now. They are pretty solid, and it's pretty nice to have. Generally, I only like to take one of these at a time, just because I usually forget to use the second one, and then I forget to send my ship back to resupply. If you don't have that problem like I do, then you can take more of them, but generally I just stick to one of these, either like the bombing run, the strafing run, or the 500 kg, and the other ones I don't use as often. They still can be fun to use though, and especially if I'm using a randomizer, they're pretty good. If you'd like to see more videos like this, just feel free to tell me. I will likely be doing this with each different type of stratagem, going over like the weapons for each of the different races, and also things like the orbital strikes. So thank you guys so very much for watching this. I hope that you guys enjoyed it, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye bye everybody!